The Zen Environment by Marian Mountain. Thinking. In the middle of typing over a paragraph for the third time, but not the last, I hear the soft trickling nesting call of a canyon wren. Whenever I hear the song of this shy bird, it takes me back to Tassajara. Once again, I find myself sitting on the round black cushion in the zendo, surrounded by black-robed monks. Through the open windows, I can hear the murmur of Tassajara Creek, and nearby the sounds of the kitchen crew making breakfast. It's almost the end of the second period of Zazen, when, from the top of the zendo roof, the canyon wren pours out a shower of pure liquid notes that splash over sleepy bald heads and wake everyone up to the wonder of this fantastic world of ours. Though I've never heard them, I'm sure that the songs of the nightingale or the calavinca, which is a mythical Indian bird, do not compare in beauty with the song of the shy canyon wren. Quietly, I move across the room and out the open door to see if I can catch a glimpse of the bird. I don't have long to wait. The wren calls again softly, a shimmering waterfall of crystal clear notes. I trace the call to the source under the wooden steps that lead from the kitchen patio up to the driveway above the house. The wren must have built a nest right here under the steps. What a good omen. The sound of the kettle of water simmering on the stove calls me to the kitchen. I hear you, kettle. You too have a beautiful song. You too preach the Dharma that can never be put into words. I make myself a cup of coffee and I take it outside. I sit down on the old wooden bench in the little kitchen patio. The begonias look dry. The chrysanthemums need pinching back. And the dead nasturtium blossoms should be picked. When I'm finished with my coffee, I'll put my typewriter away for the day. My unfinished paragraph will polish itself naturally while I water the plants and pull some weeds in the garden. After a Zen student has fully settled his body into the position of Zazen, he is in a position to settle his mind. Our thinking mind is used to keep itself busy, very busy. It prides itself on the ability to work day and night, but actually our thinking mind has a problem. It doesn't know how to relax. The practice of Zazen is a time when we allow the thinking mind to come to a well-needed rest. Only after the thinking mind is settled down in the center of existence will we be in a position to resume our original nature. A monk asked a Zen master, "What is Zen?" The master replied, "I eat when I eat, and I sleep when I sleep." The monk asked, "Isn't that what everybody does?" The master replied, "Not at all. When most people eat, they think of other things. And when most people sleep, they dream of other places." The practice of Zazen encourages a person to put his whole body and mind where it belongs, in the actual physical reality of the moment, rather than allowing the mind to drift away to some other time or place. When the mind is allowed to wander away from the body, even just for a few minutes, or just a few inches, the body and mind are split, and this division, if prolonged, tends to cause internal conflicts. When internal conflicts are projected outside, external problems are created. Before we begin the practice of Zazen, it's almost impossible to realize that the biggest source of human suffering could be such a simple thing as the habit of letting your mind wander away from its home. The conflict, suffering, and turmoil caused by the division of mind and body add confusion to the problem. Secondary habits, such as overindulgence in alcohol, drugs, TV, work, or religious fanaticism, are some of the extras which are often added to the original discontent created by the split between the mind and the body. But underneath all the confusion of the surface symptoms lies the basic and undetected problem, the mischief created by the thinking faculty. Before we begin to practice Zazen, we are not aware of how carried away we are most of the time by our thinking. The old saying which goes, "A man takes the first drink, a drink takes the second drink, and the third drink takes the man," is just as true with thinking as it is with drinking. The first thought leads to another, and then another, and another, and before we realize it, several hours have disappeared from our lives. Whenever our body is doing one thing and our mind is somewhere else, we're actually living some imaginary life, and we have missed living much of our actual life. This is why we feel cheated. Actually, we cheat ourselves. Living in some imaginary life can be very intoxicating. It often seems more interesting than our real life. But sooner or later, the imaginary life wears off, and we find ourselves back in the same old reality again, and we have added something extra to it, a splitting headache. When we live completely in the actual reality of our own life, with our own body and mind, it's like drinking milk. Drinking milk may seem very ordinary compared to drinking alcohol. To an alcoholic, milk may even taste like medicine. Excuse me. But the after effects of drinking milk are very beneficial. In the same way, when we live completely in the full reality of our own life, the after effects of this way of living leave us with a sense of physical and mental well-being. So the practice of Zazen is as natural and as ordinary as drinking milk. Zazen may be more like drinking homogenized milk, for Zazen unites or homogenizes all the senses into harmonious blend that enables our mind to digest all experiences evenly and efficiently. When we begin the practice of Zazen, it's like joining Thinkers Anonymous. Before we take up the practice of Zazen, we first have to admit to ourselves that we have become mentally confused. Our life may have presented us with a natural koan, a problem which we are not able to solve by thinking. At this time, it's almost impossible to see that it is thinking itself that is really the problem. Western civilization has conditioned us to put values on different kinds of thinking. Some kinds of thinking are considered profitable, and other kinds harmful. Wishful thinking, fantasizing, daydreaming, and imagining are usually looked upon as inferior forms of thinking, while planning, remembering, reasoning, judging, comparing, discriminating, reflecting, selecting, or contemplating are believed to be higher modes of thought. In the Western countries, overindulgence in daydreaming is recognized by most people to be unhealthy. We say that a person who fantasizes a great deal of the time loses touch with reality. But it is not easy for most Westerners to appreciate the fact that anyone who indulges in reasoning, planning, or any of the higher forms of thought is also liable to lose touch with reality. Reality is beyond thinking. Reality cannot be touched directly by thought, but only when reality is touched directly, not only with the body, but with the mind as well. Life is fully realized. The mind can touch reality directly. Oh, just a minute. Let me start that sentence again. The mind that can touch reality directly is the original mind before it was divided by thought. The original mind, in its unconditioned state, is clear and empty and alert. It is pure awareness, without any distortions produced by thinking. After we begin the practice of Zazen, we may make the mistake of trying to eliminate all our thoughts. But Thinkers Anonymous, like Alcoholics Anonymous, does not recommend total abstinence. Overthinking is more like overeating. It is possible to abstain totally from drinking alcohol and still live a perfectly normal life. But we must eat, and as long as we live in this world, thoughts will appear in our mind. It's only when we have allowed ourselves to be carried away by our thinking process that we may find it necessary to follow a mental exercise program for a while to get our mind back in shape. But here too we must be careful. If we go on a crash diet or try to starve our mind, it will only work for a while, but sooner or later we will go back to gorging ourselves again. It isn't the thoughts themselves that create problems, but the attachment to those thoughts. The way we handle the situation is just to let the thoughts come in and let them go out without getting attached to their delicious or unpleasant flavors. Whenever we discover that our mind is wandering, we learn to lead it gently back home to the present moment, to the present environment. In this way, our mind will digest all the thoughts that appear in it, and gradually they'll decrease. When the occasion arises in which it's appropriate to put our whole body and mind into thinking, in brackets, working on some problem which can be solved by thinking, close bracket, we will find our thinking faculty much improved in performance. Of course, it takes some time before we are able to recognize the kind of problem that can be solved by thinking and the kind of problem that can only be confused by thinking. Shakespeare said, "There is nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so." Because our culture has overemphasized the value of thinking, considering it good, we must be careful not to overreact and jump to the conclusion that thinking is bad. Thinking is neither good nor bad. It's a function of human life, like eating. If we are attached to eating, our body suffers physically. If we are attached to thinking, our body suffers mentally. Attachment is created when we think something is either good or bad. Zazen is sometimes called mind fasting. There is some resemblance between physical fasting and mind fasting, although I have not fasted physically for a long period of time. I understand that in the process of fasting there is a period of several days in which a false hunger is experienced. Then a period of a week or two, or in some cases longer, follows in which no hunger is felt. Finally, true hunger is experienced. Our ordinary mental activity may be like false hunger. Right thinking or true thinking may be like true hunger. The difference between false thinking and true thinking can be appreciated in the experience of mental fasting or Zazen. If we can imagine Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path as forming a circle, the step of right thought is next to the step of right meditation. When we understand right meditation, we are able to take one more step and return to thinking, not false thinking, but true thinking. Right thinking is concentrated, clear, penetrating, and free from selfish desires. This kind of thinking does not carry us away from ourselves. It leads us deeper into our original nature, into harmony with the whole Zen environment.